Dear participants, welcome to the third session of Day 4 Room 1 presentations. In this session, we are hosting the Rector of Izmir Institute of Technology from Turkey, Professor Dr. YUSUF BARAN, Director of Tashkent Institute of Architecture and Civil Engineering, Uzbekistan, Professor Dr. Ercan KAHYA, the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering in Final University, Professor Dr. ORHAN GEMIKONAKLI, from Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and Professor ELMIRA HASSANZADEH, a faculty member at the Polytechnic Montreal, Canada. Welcome, professors, and thank you for joining this session. Firstly, I would like to invite Professor Baran from Izmir Institute of Technology, Turkey, to deliver his presentation.
Thank you so much for this very kind introduction, and I would love to thanks to the organizing committee for their kind invitation and giving me the chance to share my ideas regarding with the science diplomacy, soft power to connect the world through the science. So science diplomacy is a very new terminology that used in science and diplomacy and by scientists and diplomats as well. And it's a new way to connect the countries, the cultures, the colors. So over here you can see the 6 continents, many countries, cultures, and regions. And of course, there are many different ways that you can connect the countries, the capitals, the societies as well. But the best way to connect the countries, the cultures is through the scientific collaborations and cooperations. Because science is apolitical, it addresses the issue of great importance to all societies. I mean, you can face with the global challenges, and the science is the best and the only way to solve the global challenges and even the local problems as well. It's based on a method, so there is transparency, peer review, and meritocracy. And of course, the science gives us access to the world's best minds because the best minds are accumulated within the campuses and the universities. Science diplomacy is the use of scientific collaborations among nations to address common problems and to build constructive international partnerships. But of course, there are 3 terminology used for science diplomacy. The first one is the science in diplomacy, which means informing foreign policy objectives with scientific advice, diplomacy for science, facilitating international science cooperation, and science for diplomacy, using scientific cooperation to improve international relations between the countries. So overall, science for diplomacy, diplomacy for science, and science in diplomacy will provide internationalization of the research. And altogether, they will increase the influence of science to societies, to global challenges and the problems. When you look at the countries worldwide, you can see there are many countries that having the full-time science diplomats in their external affairs and international relations. And for Turkey, it's on the way to come up. So as you can see, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals as determined by the United Nations. So no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality education, smart cities, peace, justice, and etc. In order to achieve all these Sustainable Development Goals for humankind and for the better future of the world, for sure, we need science and we need scientists. And there is no border between the scientific cooperations and collaborations and even within the disciplines as well. We have the problems that we are facing with, like peace, democracy, human rights, children's rights, women's rights, discrimination, education, migration, and immigration. And on the other hand, we have some, these ones were like soft problems, and we have hard problems as well, like climate change, water, energy, food, drug resistance, ethics, poverty. No discipline, no country, no university by itself can solve these global challenges. And of course, we need to provide the bridges we need to provide cooperation and collaboration between the disciplines and the universities and the countries as well. Very basically, over here you can see that by 2030, we need 45% more energy, 30% more water, and 50% more food as compared to our today world. And in order to achieve all these goals, and in order to provide all these resources to humankind, we need to collaborate and we need to strengthen the science diplomacy. In my country, Turkey, here you can see Turkey is like a bridge between the north and south, between the west and east, between the Islamic and Christian culture, between the developed and developing world. And we are trying our best to increase the scientific cooperations and collaborations between Turkey and all other the universities as well, and the countries as well. If you want to ease tension in any part of the world, science diplomacy can help. Scientific cooperations and collaborations provide a new bridge, a new cooperation, a new way of diplomacy, a new cooperation and sharing the infrastructure and human resources in order to ease the tensions. As you can imagine, there was a project that was run worldwide, and the result was announced in 2001, which was Human Genome Project, and 5 countries and more than hundreds of the scientists with $2.7 billion US contributed, and at the end, all the humankind get benefit from this international cooperation. Another one is the CERN that is located within the Switzerland. And as you know, best minds from all around the world, from many different universities and from many different disciplines, contribute to achieve the goals that when the CERN experiment was dreamed and tried to realize. Over here, you can see a research center that was located in Jordan, Hissami. Hissami is the synchrotron light for experimental science and applications in the Middle East. And over here, you can see the founder countries of the Hissami. So you can see Pakistan, Iran, Jordan, Egypt, Israel, Palestine, Cyprus, and Turkey. So when you check the cooperation and collaboration between the countries in political perspective, you can see some tensions. You can see some conflicts between the countries. But when it comes to the scientific cooperation and collaboration, the people, the diplomats, the politicians from the countries that cannot come together to have a sit, to have a decision, to collaborate. But when it comes to scientific cooperation or collaboration, you can see science is the best and the strongest way to cooperate and collaborate. Over here, you can see in Turkey the certain bodies that contribute to science diplomacy, like Ministry of Industry and Technology, TÜBİTAK, which is the main funding agency for science and technology in Turkey, Higher Education Council, Turkish Academy of Sciences, and Yunus Emre Institute. Over here, you can see we organized a science school, science fair in one of the immigrant refugee camps in the border of Turkey and Syria. And here you can see how the kids can enjoy and can benefit from the scientific cooperation that we organized. And here you can see the warm welcome of the scientists to the kids in these refugee camps provided an amazing attraction and an amazing interest of students to science, to experiments that we run during that day. And of course, science diplomacy can provide the initiation of very big cooperation and collaborations between the universities. Once I was in Rwanda, in Kigali, for a meeting, and I gave a conference over there. Then I met with certain people, African people, Rwandan people, and you know, they have some connections with Turkey, because just one of the international student in Kayseri, which is in the middle of Anatolia, provided a strong trade cooperation between Kayseri and Kigali, because he met with the business guy in Kayseri, one of the city in Turkey, then invited them to his country, and then a cooperation and collaboration started between Kayseri and Kigali. And here you can see during that time, Rwanda president assigned an ambassador to Turkey, whose name was Cesar Kaiseria. So one international student can provide a strong connection, communication, and bridge between the countries and the societies as well. And here I met with one of the business guy who started a business just through using this student as a bridge between Turkey and Rwanda. And over here you can see one of my visits to an African school to provide a scientific fair and an outreach in the middle of Africa. Of course, we need to build the partnerships between the countries and the universities and the societies. And of course, when we build a partnership between the universities, the countries and societies, we need to take care of certain and specific issues like, your success, your CV, the CV of the university, and of course, the impact you have will provide an attraction for your partner. When you start to talk, to build a partnership, you need to be clear and you should do it simple. Of course, transparency and openness is the best way to convince your partner to collaborate. And of course, you need to know how to share. So when there is an outcome between these collaboration, then you need to know how to share. And the best way is to decide about the sharing opportunities or the sharing agenda at the beginning of the partnership. Of course, we are from very different cultures, colors, religions, and quite different part of the world. And the sensitivities may change from one country to another, one society to another. So we need to welcome to any kind of sensitivities and the rules for our partners. We need to provide success stories in order to strengthen the science diplomacy and scientific cooperations. Because when we have a success story, then there will be another important attraction to start new collaborations. And of course, it's a long way, a long term, a long marathon to achieve the scientific cooperations and the partnerships. And of course, one of the key to success is to never give up. So we, the scientists and the science leaders, should be patient because it might take time. So over here you can see one of the science paper, and it was on the science paper that time for a new era of science diplomacy. And the most important message was that scientists are among a country's most effective diplomats. So the scientists from all around the world can provide a diplomacy, can be the best diplomats, the best ambassadors for their cultures and the countries as well. So a new model, actually a new role for the scientist is coming out, which is the diplomacy. In our university, in Izmir Institute of Technology, of course, knowing about the science diplomacy and importance of the science diplomacy, of course, we invested a lot on internationalization of our university. And at the beginning, we increased the MOU number, but of course, with the concrete outcome for around 800 persons. And then we became a UNESCO chair, and we got a biotechnology and innovation for sustainable development chair of UNESCO as well. And then as the university, we become an excellence center by UNESCO and the World Academy of Sciences. And here you can see when we get this approval, then there were 216 applicants in 2020 and 2021 to our university, which provide a brain drain or brain circulation to our university. Of course, we also got an funding from European Union in order to provide a movement of the brains to our university and work together. We become a member of an associate member of European University Foundation. Then we become a member of the Mustafa Laboratory Network. This network was established as a platform in order to provide a connection and communication between the Islamic countries. Then we became one of the shortlisted university of Turkey to become a part of 100 Universities program of One Belt and One Road project. then we are one of 3 Euro Access Turkey network contact point. And currently we are working hard to get an UNESCO category 2 research center to our university. Currently, there are 4 UNESCO category 2 research centers located in China, in Rwanda, Mexico, and Brazil. And we are gonna be number 5 in the world. Then we will become an attraction point and movement point for the international science leaders. All this together increase the total budget of international projects for 650% in just last 1 year. When you look at the outcome of this internationalization vision and the goal of our university, you can see 25% of the articles are published in top 10 ranked journals in the world. For Europe, it's 28, Turkey 14. In our university, it's 43.3. But when you check the number of the articles with international corporations, we are like 100% more than Turkey's average, 50% more than Europe, and 225% more than the world. So 1 out of 2 articles published in Izmir Institute of Technology is with an international cooperation. We provide our students to go to Europe for an Erasmus program, to become a science diplomat, to become a world citizen. Currently, we have 106 international cooperation with the European universities, and we send our university students to become a real world citizen. Currently, we have students and professors from more than 50 countries of the world. And here you can see one of our meetings with the international students, and I'm happy to inform you that Izmir Institute of Technology is ranking number one for international student satisfaction. So all these internationalization vision, mission, dream, and the goals take us to be invited by the UN, by European Parliament, and very recently we were invited to G20 Research and Digital Minister meeting that was hosted in Italy by the president of the Italian government. So we are doing our best for internationalization of our university because we believe in that. No single country or the university or the discipline can solve the global challenges. And we have the best minds and most advanced infrastructure in any part of the world. So we need to collaborate, we need to cooperate, we need to do our best to create much better world and provide the transformation of the world into better stage. So once again, I would like to thank the organizing committee for their very kind invitation and giving us the chance to share our ideas regarding with the science diplomacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Baran, for sharing your valuable and interesting research. It's our pleasure to host you here with us, and thank you for your contributions.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to invite our second keynote speaker from Final University, North Cyprus, Professor ORHAN GEMIKONAKLI. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. Let me share the screen first. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see, Professor.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I'm ORHAN GEMIKONAKLI from Final International University. First, I would like to thank the introduction, and I also would like to thank the conference organizers for giving me this opportunity to present my topic here. We know that all progress is born of inquiry. Doubt is often better than overconfidence, for it leads to inquiry. Inquiry leads to invention. So anything we do at universities should be to inquire so that we can succeed, we can lead ourselves to invention. Now, in this talk, I'll present findings of two symposiums I happen to be the chair of in 2018 and 2019. Although the topic was not on sustainability, since the conferences, symposiums were on urbanization, sustainability was an essential ingredient of many talks. The town I'm talking about is LEFKE. That's in the west of Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. First, I'll introduce this town and then talk about the findings of these two symposiums, and I'll try to add a few more things which may be arguable but worth discussing. So the outline is introduction, recommendations from the two symposiums. These are the collective responses we had at the symposiums, of course. So it's a summary I'm giving here rather than my ideas. Further recommendations for sustainable development and conclusions. Now, I did mention my aim, the aim of this talk. We want our voice to be heard, first of all. Secondly, the problems analyzed there, the solutions proposed, are not unique to our small town, LEFKE, or the county. But most of these may be applicable to wider places, other places that suffer similar problems. So we had academics who attended to this conference, representatives of NGOs, and many other interested people who wanted their voices heard, who wanted to contribute or learn from this symposium. The idea was to produce policies for the development of the city economy in harmony with the environment and nature, to deal with dynamics that determine the city economy in terms of competition, growth, and development, to examine relations of the city economy at local, regional, national, and global levels. So many areas, education, tourism, agriculture, development, have been discussed at these two symposiums. And of course, it's not surprising to see that most presentations involved sustainability. There was a long list of topics from city identity to urban culture, economy, history, planning, current approaches, architecture, education, health, tourism, environment, economy, administration policies and local governments, and urbanization and housing that we try to address at this symposium. The first one was organized by LEFKE Belediyesi, the municipality, and supported by the local university, European University of LEFKE. In the second one, LEFKE Belediyesi and the university worked together in making the second symposium success as well. We did plan a third one, however, because of the pandemic, we couldn't actually have it. The idea was to have a number of panels, invite the authorities, the technocrats, the bureaucrats, to have discussions based on what scientists recommended. So, starting with planning and construction for sustainable development, the growth of the university in the area increased the population considerably. It's about 40%. That's a huge increase in a short time. More interestingly, the student population concentrated in one of the neighborhoods. It's not that the whole county have the students. The county has no master plan. Yes, there's one in progress, but no master city plan. So we can see almost random construction work that dominates the neighborhood. And of course, this is not what we would like to see. We want to make the county, the district, more livable. So we have to consider not only the town center, but the surrounding villages together. The recommendation was that administrative and business centers should be identified with the current situation in mind, observing the nature as well. The opening of the farm areas to settlement is another problem we can see in the area. It threatens the green texture this area of Cyprus is proud of. First of all, there used to be copper mining, and the company owns about 40% of the town's land. The company does not exist anymore, that left the country. This, together with ex-military zone Koprona, if open to settlement, they may solve a problem, and you may protect the green texture, and actually the authorities will be in a position not to allow any building work in the green belt. Environmental issues were discussed with an emphasis on mining waste, improvement of the GEMIKONAKLI dam, and geotourism. Of course, LEFKE is unique in the sense that although it's one of the water-rich places in Cyprus, it also had a mine, and it was good for agriculture as well. These don't all go together, of course. So with an irresponsible company that left behind all the mining waste, it has become a huge problem. Now, look at these aspects. There were some recommendations such as protection and restoration of historical and cultural heritage. There are mansions, historical residences from Ottoman period. But this need to be restored and may actually provide accommodation if desired in terms of geotourism. Investment into faith tourism may work as well. We have the convent of Naqshbendi Sheikh Nazım Kıbrisi. We have some old churches such as Ajendu Church that can be restored for this purpose. Another recommendation was the city museum for the promotion of both the geological and mining heritage in the city of LEFKE and its surroundings. There's a garbage storage area in Karadağ. Since then, some work has been carried out to this effect. It has been rehabilitated, or there's some progress in that sense. Again, the negative effects of old mining activities on human health are concerning. We need a study to determine epidemiological findings. Again, environmental quality monitoring studies should be planned regarding negative effects of various compounds in water, air, and soil on human health. Unfortunately, we cannot drink the water that comes from underground sources. The low-grade waste and ore-bearing excavation piles from the mining period should be disposed of professionally. They've been there for 40, 50 years now. There were some attempts to reuse them, sell them, clear them, but all failed. Ore loading docks. Well, we have 2 docks actually, which are considered cultural heritage, should be repaired, made resistant to corrosion, and turned into tourist attraction. They go into the sea beautifully, but they're going to collapse soon if not repaired, taken care of. Again, the situation of the mining galleries used underground management during the CMC period should be investigated. If they have sufficient fortifications, they can be visited safely. There are such centers used for geotourism. I remember visiting one myself in Wales. There's the LEFKE baths, an interesting architecture located close to the entrance point of the galleries that should be restored and used for geotourism purposes. A management plan is needed that will result in zero waste within the framework of a sustainable environmental approach. This for the mine waste. We need to see the elimination of all elements that threaten the environment in the mine waste area, fulfilling all the requirements of international legislation, restoring the natural structure of the area, bringing an environmental gain to the TRNC with this recycling-oriented innovative approach, which may set an example globally. Another topic area was sustainable economy and tourism, where we had recommendations for. First, the production and market of quality products should be provided by providing necessary consultancy services for the cultivation of products identified with CYPRUS. Well, we can say potatoes, artichokes, citrus fruits, olives, carrot, which are suitable for the conditions of the region and have climatic advantages. Again, agricultural sustainability should be ensured by directing the producer, taking into account the country's needs and the market, rather than doing things randomly, as it happens. There was some work on brand studies for products specific to a region. Not much success so far. But in addition to this, ecological markets where organic products are marketed should be included. Ecotourism is moving. Some villages invested into this and it seems to be working. But for this, it must be ensured that small cities preserve their traditional structures, remove vehicle traffic from city centers, encourage local production and consumption, and protect the local history, architecture, cultural, environmental characteristics of the city. And LEFKE is a good candidate for this. Finally, to shed a light on economic planning and employment, we need reliable statistical data on labor market, which is non-existent nowadays. There was some recommendations on health and social services as well. To establish a social service unit with the employment of a team of experts to conduct need risk analysis for the region, evaluate what practice can be implemented for this analysis. To improve the quality of life of the elderly, developing policies to prevent diseases in old age, ensure full access to health and care services, meet the health needs of the elderly and encourage their participation in the process. Development of intergenerational solidarity and communication. We can involve universities, departments in this activity as well. We have one hospital, Cengiz Topal Hospital, which was planned to be closed by the central authorities. They didn't at the end, but it's not at contemporary standards. It's essential that this facility is brought up to contemporary standards. On the energy side, well, we need a statistical base for energy production and consumption records. That's not clear what's happening nowadays. We need policies for sustainable energy production. We need ecological architecture in construction. Nowadays, we know that buildings can use technology to save energy with good insulation, proper orientation, taking the sun into account to reduce energy consumption, and heat formation, production of some of the energy that the buildings will consume, well, mainly through using solar collectors, solar cells. Systems that clean grey water, eco-designed buildings, quality certified and eco-labeled and recycled materials. We need to create sustainable structures, and this should be legalized, should be mandatory. Next topic was politics, citizenship, culture, and education. It was recommended that a new concept of responsibility is defined based on ethical values. The concept of civic responsibility should be developed. This is a term, a concept becoming more important globally. Necessary steps should be taken to protect urban living environments. We have to keep the cultural heritage alive and ensure that, of course, future generations learn their past through the heritage we keep maintaining. Concerned that both local, national, and worldwide values emerge from LEFKE, yes, we have such personalities. Studies should be carried out to keep the memories of these personalities alive, explain their teachings, their productions, their work. A few names to count is Solon, first of all, the one who established democracy in Greece, lived in the area. There's an amphitheater in his name, Solon. A world-renowned sociologist, Niyazi Berkes, very famous. Scientists living in various parts of the world, many of them. Researchers like Harit Fedai, a storyteller like Cavit Kürnet, poets like Fikret Demiral and Mehmet Yaşar. At some stage, they settled in LEFKE. Researching the popular movements in LEFKE, especially what happened in 1948 in the mines, there was a strike that lasted a few months. And, well, the effects of such movements on international, national, and local policies, we have to investigate, research, and publish the findings. And finally, compiling the writings of Cypriots as well as foreigners on LEFKE, making them available to researchers in printed and or electronic formats. LEFKE is a CITES law. It's part of the network. There is a lot of work to be done in this scope as well. So we have to fully implement the slow city philosophy. First of all, the nature and authenticity of the city should be preserved. Some work is in progress, but it's never sufficient. Certain professions should be supported, otherwise they'll die out, and the local people should be encouraged in this regard. Again, we need to be able to present local products in the slow city market. We can include the unemployed, men, women alike, and even retired city dwellers in these occupational groups. LEFKE should become part of slow food and earth market movements as well. These were the recommendations from the two symposiums. Of course, there's a lot more that can be said about sustainability. Some of the concepts, some of the ideas may be arguable because they have benefits, but they may not be as efficient as modern techniques used in, say, agriculture. But few things to quote here. We know that scientific discussions are never complete. We have to keep questioning, keep inquiring. So the additions I would like to make here to what was said in the two symposiums is, firstly, we have to implement climate-friendly agricultural solutions. We need correct strategies to lead agricultural activities rather than leaving it to the citizens to decide what's best. We have an irrigation system. It was good when it was built, but it's a very old irrigation system. So its state should be discussed and the future of it should be decided now. The solar revolution, there's so much done in the area, but are we using it properly? And again, e-government and sustainability is another topic to be explored. So I'll say a few words about this as well before I finish my presentation. So we said climate-friendly agricultural solutions should be recommended and at least should be discussed, investigated, understood. We know that global warming is the main threat to our Earth. So the need for truly sustainable and climate-friendly development is very clear. A 2 degrees Celsius increase will be disastrous. That's what scientists say. And I guess we have been late in preventing that, but whatever we can say from now on. The effect of change in agriculture and land use, including deforestation in tropical areas, should be understood well, and we should do everything we can to protect the green belt in the area. Again, we should discuss the erosion due to tillage and traditional irrigation approaches which are dominant in LEFKE. So, various climate-friendly agricultural solutions have already been proposed. One is biochar, the other one is non-tillage agriculture. These are not perfectly clear. Yes, they have benefits, but there are buts as well. That's why I keep saying we should investigate this to see the suitability for our region. We know biochar is a charcoal-like substance that's made by burning organic material from agriculture and forestry wastes. It's also known as biomass. It's done in a controlled process called pyrolysis. It looks a lot like common charcoal, we know, but biochar is produced using a specific process to reduce contamination and safely store carbon. So we don't release it into the air. So during this process, organic materials such as wood chips, leaf litter, or dead plants are burned in a container with very little oxygen. And there's plenty of these materials to be burned in our area. As the materials burn, they release little to no contaminating fumes. That's the positive side. And during the process, the organic material is converted into biochar. This is a stable form of carbon that can't easily escape into the atmosphere. And of course, in this process, there will be energy, heat created. Then this can be captured and used as a form of clean energy. Scientists say that biochar is by far more efficient at converting carbon into a stable form and is cleaner than other forms of charcoal. When we look at the sources of global greenhouse gas emission, we see that agriculture has a big impact. Land use change and forest 18% and agriculture 13%. That makes almost a third of the contribution to gas emissions. So we can say agriculture is the primary driver of land use change and deforestation. And again, 74% of all agricultural emissions originate in developing countries. That's because the developed countries contribute more through industrial activities. 70% of the agricultural mitigation potential can be realized in these same countries, the developing countries, or should we say underdeveloped countries. Another solution offered is tillage or no tillage farming, because tillage has a negative impact as well as some positive aspects on soil quality. For newly mechanized farmers, tillage was a way to solve problems. It's used widely, worldwide. That's used for seedbed preparation, weed suppression, soil aeration, turning over cover crops and forages, burying heavy crop residue, leveling the soil, incorporating manure and fertilizer into root zone, and activating pesticides. Okay, there are reasons for using tillage. But it has a negative effect, contribution to soil quality as well. It fractures the soil, disrupts soil structure, accelerating surface runoff and soil erosion, which is quite serious. Tillage reduces crop residue, which help cushion the force of pounding raindrops. So the soil is not protected against the pounding of raindrops. Again, without crop residue that tillage destroys, soil particles become more easily dislodged, being moved or splashed away. And of course, the splash particles clog soil pores, which means they effectively seal off the soil surface, resulting in poor water infiltration. The amount of soil loss on farmland each year is directly related to soil structure, levels of crop residue remaining on the soil surface, and the intensity of tillage practices. These are quite serious. So, no-till vegetables may help to harness the power of cover crops. There are some experimentation, and as the pictures depict as well. In the first part of the picture, there's no cover crop, so we see weeds growing. We see radish that grew under forage or oat mix. Sometimes this is more when it comes to cover crop residue. Yes, by giving up some modern techniques used in farming, we may be producing less, but it may have long-term advantages. So no-till vegetables show that we can harness the power of cover crops without using tillage. Forage conservation is an important topic. It allows the intensification of dairy farming with a higher stocking rate than using nutrient from grassland and harvested forages only. And it's used widely. we get hay, for example, by drying it. Nutritive value of concept forage is a direct relation to animal production and land productivity. So you have to make sure it has high nutritive value. The wheat growing in LEFKE's orange gardens are destroyed by chemicals and or ploughing, tillage. So the use of chemicals contaminates the soil and it prevents forage conservation as well. That's a big loss, something to be addressed, to be investigated. We need to control soil erosion, which may be due to water runoff, sediment delivery, and wind. Ploughing contributes to this erosion as well. Flooding the fields that is done in LEFKE is another concern. So our irrigation approach to flood the fields as we irrigate them. We need to employ new techniques urgently for sustainability. We need to look into what else can be used, and there are examples from the world, especially when it comes to irrigation. So land use change, permanent vegetation, and cover crops are important to discuss and implement as appropriate. We have an irrigation system which is about 70 years old. It's out of date, and of course that means it results in water wastage. There are three dams actually with the new one that store water, and it is used, and there's an irrigation system to serve mainly orange gardens. The continuing traditional means of irrigation, which is just flooding the fields, causing erosion, has also become an impact on the water resources. At places, of course, all waterways, some wells are blocked by new construction, especially new roads. So as the prices of the products go down as well, people gave in to construction work on fertile plains. Now we can see buildings rising, what used to be a green belt. Once famous orange fields, date production, walnut trees are in decline in LEFKE. Something to stop. On the left-hand side, we see the irrigation used in LEFKE as well, although photo is not from LEFKE. And we can see modern irrigation method on the right. They may help with reducing erosion. Unsustainable farming. Well, if you continue this way in near future, the farming produce will be reduced. It's already in decline anyway. So, of course, one reason is unfavorable market prices for the products. People cannot benefit from what they produce as much as they used to. So they let building work, or selling their land or giving in turn to a couple of floods, etc. The arbitrary use of pesticide, which is a Cyprus-wide problem on some producers, threatens people's lives and soil quality, something to avoid. The lack of government initiatives to enlighten the farmers means they don't know anything about climate-friendly solutions to agricultural activities, which are used in some other countries. Especially non-tillage techniques became popular in the United States in 1930s when there were dust storms. Farmers are unaware of the contribution of the ploughing of the soil regularly and flooding the field as an irrigation approach to erosion. So they must be educated. However, it's not all positive about non-tillage, of course. It's clean, but not necessarily most effective. But still, it's a topic worth investigating. The use of solar panels for hot water and electricity. Yes, we use solar panels widely for hot water, but they're installed arbitrarily without know-how, the best positioning of the solar panels, for example, using the technologies that are more efficient. Yes, it does the job because there's an abundance of sunlight here, but we can get the hot water cheaper. And more year. So we need correct investment for this purpose that will contribute to the economy. The solar energy has been growing in northern Cyprus. There is a boost. There are some government policies to support it, but there's more to do. And interestingly, LEFKE seems to lag behind in investing in this environmental friendly and financially viable technology. This must be encouraged as well. We do have several festivals in AR. The parking has been a problem. Traffic has been a problem, especially there was one on 7th of November, last Sunday, and we witnessed that people flooded the streets of this town center, and the streets were clogged by not only people but cars as well. Existing car parking facilities are insufficient, and maybe introduction of park and drive will be a provision for these special days. You can't see it implemented throughout the year. There won't be a demand for it, but certainly in some occasions it will be a big contribution to improve people's lives. And finally, e-government and sustainability. There's research work that shows that successful implementation of e-government is known to drive sustainability. This is a topic we discussed in the second symposium. I did a presentation. I look into the e-government initiative in Northern Cyprus, discuss it with the authorities, people who actually develop it, build it, work with it, plan it. The process has been developing at a slow pace with crucial shortcomings. It's still at its infancy, leaving a lot of work to be done. And the most important finding I reached is that the TRNC lacks a national development strategy that should be used as the base of an e-government strategy. This, of course, inhibits the development of a proper e-government strategy and healthy development of e-government services. Unavoidably, this reflects in local governments, because if central authorities don't have a proper e-government system, local governments cannot really go beyond a point in implementing theirs. So I would like to conclude that I try to summarize the findings of two symposiums we had on urbanization of LEFKE. There were some recommendations, there were some problem identifies, overuse, irresponsible use of earth resources led us to global warming, erosion, water shortages, etc. Something we can witness in LEFKE as well. The being an ex-mining company leave problems too. So we look at the recommendations of the two symposium on LEFKE. We know that in addition to taking these on board, there's a need to evaluate new approaches to agriculture to preserve, effectively use our land and water resources. And we need action today, such as educating local farmers on tillage, on irrigation, on the use of chemicals. We need planned agriculture, not arbitrary investment. We need to improve the solar energy policy, speed up the development of e-government. More importantly, clean up the waste that the mining company left behind. For this, we need political will. Lack of political will to act on world's problems is killing the world slowly. And we know that tomorrow will be too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor GEMIKONAKLI, for sharing your valuable presentation regarding the very important issues in our country and in the world. Thank you very much for your contributions. Now I would like to invite our next guest, Professor HASSANZADEH from Polytechnique Montreal, Canada. Professor, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this conference. So I'm going to share my slides with you. You can give me some instructions. So I have to go to share.
Share at the bottom of your screen.
Yes.
There's share button.
Yes. And
when
then
you click on it, you have three selections. Please choose window.
choose window, yes.
And then choose your slides.
Can you see my slides? Are you able to see my slides?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I guess you shared your screen, your entire screen, instead of your PowerPoint slides.
Okay, so just give me a moment. I was able to do this last night. Are you able to see my screen? Not yet?
Yes, we can see your screen, Professor.
And you can see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides as well. I would appreciate it if you can make your screen full screen. Yes, perfect.
Okay. And I have 25 minutes, right?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. So welcome everyone, and I would like to thank you for joining my presentation. As I was introduced, my name is ELMIRA HASSANZADEH, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Civil, Geological and Mining Engineering at Polytechnique Montreal, Canada. It's a great pleasure to be here. So my presentation is about improving water resource management under current and uncertain future. Before talking about management, I would like to first give a brief introduction of what we mean by water resource systems. So water resource systems have two key components: water availability, meaning the available water that we want to use for different activities such as surface and groundwater. We also have the other component, which is water demand, and that is water required by different sectors, such as for agricultural activities, for power production, industrial activities, for our nature and municipal uses. So these two key components of water systems are interacting with each other in time and space. And with water resource management, we would like to find a balance between these two elements. However, as you know, we are actually facing challenges for water resource management almost in various regions across the globe. And that can be due to the mismatch between water demands that we have and availability of water resources in time and space. Let's say we need to have we actually need water for agricultural activities during summer, but let's say in places that I am working in Canada, we have a lot of water in the month of May and April, which is actually time of snow melt. And we have same issues related to mismatch between the space of available water and our demands. This can be an example of having a lot of water in the mountainous regions, whereas in Canada, we need water for doing agricultural activities in the prairies, which is a flat region in downstream. We also have, specifically in Canada and elsewhere, we have issues related to quality of water, which means that we have a lot of lakes and rivers in Canada, but the quality of water is not good enough to use them. Although the water is abundant, they cannot be used easily for various activities. And obviously, same as various regions, we have competing sectors, competing water demands that even sometimes they have conflicting viewpoints as well. So I'm going to give you an example of that in Canada shortly. So these challenges, as I said, we have them historically in different places in the globe. However, our water resource systems now are under unprecedented pressure due to various changes that has happened recently, and I can say in the Anthropocene era. So as you know, we have a significant increase of water demand, which can be due to population growth. And as you know, the world's population has been doubled only in 50 years. And we have actually had extensive socioeconomic developments. Our agricultural land has been grown considerably, and we have actually a lot of need and a lot of uses of energy. So these require a lot of water that has actually put pressure on our water resource systems. On the other hand, we also have changes in water availability in time and space. So what we have done as human activities, we have redirected, redistributed, and used water for various activities. And also, we actually have an impact of climate change. And as you know, changes in climate, increases in temperature, changes in characteristics of precipitation have already affected key components of water systems. Specifically in the context of water resource management, they have affected the characteristics of stream flow, such as stream flow volume and peak flow timing. So this means that apart or in addition to the challenges that we had in the past, currently water resource management is facing these new issues that can be because of changes in the availability of water and demand. And as you can see in this graph that I'm presenting, the distribution of demand and availability might not be necessarily the same in the future. So this means even if we were doing perfect in the context of management, we need to have updates due to these recent changes that we have seen in water systems. So in order to give a general guideline to improve water resource management under uncertainty, we need to have a better representation of water systems. I will briefly tell you what I mean with that. And we need to have better assessments of systems under possible futures. Again, I'm going to briefly talk about it. And at the end, we need to have a better quantification of risk in operational policies under likely future. So what I mean by improving water resource system is understanding water resource system behavior is that, as I briefly mentioned before, we have interactions between system components, and better management requires better understanding of how these components are interacting under current and changing future conditions. And also we have to be able to see, for example, if we have alternative water managements, how impact of these managements can affect these system components. For that, since my Master of Science in Civil Engineering Department at the University of Tabriz, I have been using system dynamics approach to be able to represent these interactions and feedbacks among system components in time and space. And I recommend this approach for doing so because of its capability in showing these interconnections, letting us know better how system behaves. And also I usually use the software that are available for this purpose, which are fully transparent, and you can actually use the models you develop in this software, such as NRSEM, to be able to communicate your findings with both managers and stakeholders. This is actually what I have done during the past years. I have collaborated with farmers in Saskatchewan, Canada, and I have developed water quality models using this approach, and I was able to engage these farmers in water quality management in here, and they appreciate actually the approach that was used for that purpose. Coming to impact assessment, we have actually two commonly known approaches for doing so. We have actually top-down approach, which is actually based on using a series of models and methods for in the context of water management for, let's say, estimating water availability. For example, we are using the outputs of global climate models, which are the most advanced available tools to project future climate conditions such as temperature and precipitation. Using downscaling methods, we actually transfer these data that are in a large spatial and temporal resolution to the scale of our interest. And then by feeding these climate outputs, as I said, precipitation temperature, to our hydrological models, we'll be able to estimate future water availability conditions. However, there are actually uncertainties in our estimates in each of when we are using each of these models and methods, and sometimes the estimated future values are highly uncertain. That's why we actually have another approach, which is actually bottom-up, meaning that without directly using climate model outputs or downscaling approaches or even hydrological models, we want to actually assess the sensitivity of water systems to possible changes in stream flow conditions. And for that, we have actually used stochastic methods for generating flow. So when we use this approach, our idea, when we use bottom-up approach, our idea is to find tipping points of the system, where and under, let's say, which combination of changes in flow regime or which combination of changes in temperature and precipitation, our system becomes vulnerable. So we have actually used this information to talk to stakeholders and decision makers that regardless of if you believe or you're using climate models, we find these vulnerable conditions of the system, and we try to improve the performance of our management to reduce the consequence of these activities or these events that might happen in the future. So in the followings, I'm going to provide you an example of using these approaches in a case study, which is actually the province of Saskatchewan in Canada. So if I'm not sure if you're familiar with the map of Canada, so we have these prairie provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba that they're actually sharing water. So the water actually, we have two key rivers in this area, North and South Saskatchewan rivers, that they actually originate from Rocky Mountains in Alberta. And these two flows, after meeting multiple demands in the province of Alberta, let's say we use water for agricultural activities, municipal uses, they reach to Saskatchewan. And in the province of Saskatchewan, they again meet multiple demands, and then finally they reach to province of Manitoba. There's actually an act here that province of Alberta has to deliver at least 50% of its natural flows to Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan has to deliver at least 50% of its flow to the province of Manitoba. However, there are questions that under changing future conditions, would these provinces keep their, act for in terms of meeting this agreement or not? The case study that I would like to talk about more is the province of Saskatchewan, where actually I did my PhD in the city of Saskatoon. So, as I said, these two flows of North and South Saskatchewan rivers actually flow in this province. South Saskatchewan River reaches the Lake Diefenbaker, that's Gardiner Dam, one of the large dams in Canada. And after meeting multiple demands here, we actually use water for agricultural activities. We have the rolled bread baskets here in these areas. We actually produce wheat and oats here, and actually we have a series of hydropower dams that we actually generate power. And after meeting these demands, water moves towards the Saskatchewan River Delta. This delta is the largest inland delta in North America, and we have actually indigenous communities that live here, and their livelihood depends on the life of the biodiversity and characteristics of these natural ecosystem. So Saskatchewan River Delta covers about 10,000 kilometers square of land, and it is one of the large deltas in America, as I said, and we have various species of birds and fish here. So as you can see, we have diverse group of sectors in this province. And in the next slide, I'm going to tell you what are the challenges that we face in Saskatchewan, Canada. A lot of time when we talk about Canada, people talk about the abundance of water. People talk about that there might not be the issues, any issues, but here you go. I'm going to talk about these problems here. So what are the challenges that we are facing here? One of them is actually, as I mentioned, changes in climate have already affected the characteristics of stream flow regime, stream flow in Alberta. Volume of flow has been changed, peak flow timing has been changed, and the province is actually growing, and we have various human activities here, meaning that if these changes happen in the future, the province of Saskatchewan might not have enough water in the time and space that it's looking for. And also, Saskatchewan is actually planning to expand agricultural areas, actually to the extent of 400%, which is actually huge, because they are following the model that has been implemented in the province of Alberta. So they want to grow agricultural land here. This plan was on the table in the past 40 years, but now, depending on political issues, now they think that this is the time to make this happen. But this means that changes in upstream flow regime and also increase of agricultural water demand here will eventually affect socioeconomic activities in this province, and also the amount of water delivered to Manitoba. And as I said, if you remember, I said we have the largest inland delta in here, and changes in flow can potentially affect this ecosystem and its biodiversity. And already the indigenous communities that live in this area, they actually have issues of, they actually want to have water in its natural form, which because of building dams, it hasn't been the case. So they really do not agree with any policies that can again change the flow regime. They want to keep them back in time through the history. So a few questions that I already told you: how the combination of changes in upstream flow regime and development of agricultural activities can affect the ecosystem of the delta. That's one question. And second question is really, if we expand agricultural areas under these changes in flow regime, would that really increase the economy of the province? Because we are looking for irrigated agriculture, but if we don't have enough water in the good time, would that really make sense in terms of agricultural expansion and increase of net benefit in the province? These are actually two questions that I'm going to answer in the next few slides. So in order to do so, well, I developed a model in the environment of system dynamics. And as you can see, this actually shows the feedback loops between these elements of the system. So with blue, I'm showing the water-related components. With green, I'm showing how I have estimated agricultural demand or irrigation water demand, which is actually changing at each time step depending on how much water comes to the system. So it is actually showing the dynamic interactions between what we need in time and what is available. What I'm calling it is an online estimation of water demand over time. And also with red, I'm showing the components related to estimation of economic benefit for agriculture areas and as well as for power production and mining dams. So with having these models, we will be able to say at each time step if we were able to meet our water demands, and also if these changes have affected the net benefit of individual sectors and the province of Saskatchewan in total. So this is the structure of the model that has been developed, that water flows from the province of Alberta and then finally moves towards the delta and then towards Manitoba. This paper was published back in time, so if you're interested to know how it has been modeled, the system has been modeled, you can refer to this article. And here I'm just showing a simple graphical user interface that I often use to talk to local managers about if we change the availability of water or agriculture areas, how would that affect the province in total. And I recommend using these type of interfaces, especially when we are communicating with locals, to shed light on what is happening in the place. Regarding the changes in stream flow conditions, as I said, we can go with estimating flows using top-down approach, or we can actually go with bottom-up approach to identify system vulnerabilities. So I went with latter to be able to say, if we have possible changes in stream flow conditions, how would that affect my system in the future? So what I had was, in terms of the changes in flow volume for both North and South Saskatchewan River, I decided to go with, let's say, if the flow volume reduces by 25%, to if it increases by 25%. And in terms of peak flow timing, if there would be few weeks earlier in peak flow timing, versus if we would have a higher increase or shift in peak flow timing as well. So considering these options, we had in total 154 possible hydrological conditions, and for each of them, we used a stochastic flow generation algorithm, and we generated 100 realizations that can actually keep these stream flow characteristics. So with that, we were able to not only have a map that corresponds to changes in climate, but also we indirectly considered human activities, because flow cannot go based on physical and geographical conditions of the area, cannot go beyond these conditions, boundary conditions that we have specified. So here, this figure actually shows the generated flows that we have 15,000 flows. I'm showing the hydrograph of them in gray. And also this black line here is actually showing the historical stream flow regime for South Saskatchewan River. And each of these hydrographs that I am actually showing them with the condition are corresponding to a specific flow regime. For example, this blue shows that if you just compare the blue with black, it is actually showing that if the scenario that flows increase by 25%, the volume increases by 25%, and there would be 4 weeks shift in peak flow timing to the late, and the green is actually showing reduction in flow volume and 4 weeks earlier. So the point is, by this presentation, I want to say that these flows that were generated successfully were used for system vulnerability assessment under changing conditions. So what we have here is actually, we use these flow conditions once with current agriculture area, and we fed them to the developed water resource system model to see how changes in flow can affect this system's behavior. Another time, I have used these flows with increase of agriculture area by 400%, again showing that how the system will behave if we have both changes in flow regime and increases in agriculture areas. Again, this paper has been published back in time, and I'm going to just show you some details of it today. In terms of system performance, depending on the case study, we might use different indicators for that. The indicators that I use for the province of Saskatchewan, they make sense because they correspond to questions that we have received for this area. One of them is related to net benefit. If we have these changes, how would that impact the economic benefit for agricultural sector? How would that affect hydropower sector? Because if you use water for agricultural activities, this means releasing less water or having less water available for hydropower production. Would it make sense in that aspect? And also, we are actually calculating provincial net benefit, which is actually the sum of these two values. As I said, we also looked into a series of hydrological, eco-hydrological indicators, and here I will just briefly talk about two of them that we used. And these two are long-term peak flow, which means that in deltas, if there would be changes in peak flow values, this would affect the flooding of the region. This would affect the distribution of the sediments and chemical conditions of these wetlands, and their relationship between the mainstream and wetlands would be changed. So changes in peak flow regime can affect the deposition of sediment and nutrients, which is again important as an indicator of how this ecosystem will work in the future. We also looked into interannual variability of the flow, which is also another indicator of biodiversity and productivity of the aquatic ecosystems. It's interesting that we have actually been introduced with the concept of flood rhythmicity, which means that these species that we have in the river are actually have this memory of having, let's say, floods in this time with this magnitude of year, and this flood rhythmicity affects how they would spawn or where they would spawn, and basically it is indirectly affecting their productivity and biodiversity. The reason that we are using ecological indicators is that we cannot directly being able to actually say how the changes in flow can directly affect these fish and other species in this area. So here I'm actually showing the sectorial net benefit again to tell you what I'm showing here. Y-axis shows changes in flow volume. So as I said, we said that, okay, if we change flow volume from minus 25% to 25% increase, how would that affect our system? Combined with changes in peak flow timing, if we have earlier peak flow timing versus late peak flow timing, how would that affect my agricultural net benefit? This is the figure I'm showing on top. And how would that affect my hydropower net benefit? This is what I'm showing on bottom. Well, each of these panels show the results. Left panels show the results under current agriculture areas. The panels in actually right show the results under increased agriculture areas. So as you can see, if we focus on this left top panel, if we have changes in flow regime, and also we have only current agriculture areas, this means that the sector would not be vulnerable to changes in flow regime if we keep same area. However, if we increase agriculture areas, that's correct that we at some points we might have high production, but if you just take a look at these colors, you would notice that changes in flow regime would actually make this system vulnerable if we have increases in agriculture areas. For example, if the flows decrease by, let's say, 15%, we might go down to $20 million production, whereas if flows increase, we go to its maximum level. So the system becomes vulnerable if agriculture areas increases. Regarding the hydropower production, as you can see, the power production is more sensitive to changes in flow volume. Let's say if I move from down to top, as you can see, the higher the flow volume, the higher is the power production. This is reasonable. This makes sense actually, and it's actually less sensitive to changes in peak flow timing. Whereas if I consider the production of power under current agriculture areas or increased agriculture areas, I can see that its impact is not that important if I compare it with changes in flow regime, you can see on top we have these dark red values, whereas in this one it is almost lighter red. But this in comparison to changes in flow regime is kind of not significant. When I consider total provincial net benefit, which means the combination or the summation of agricultural benefit and hydropower production, as you can see under current agriculture area, the system is sensitive to changes in flow regime, moving from bottom to top. You obviously see that it's more sensitive to changes in upstream flow volume than peak flow timing. And now, if we have increase in agricultural area, the system is still sensitive to changes in flow regime, but also it is highly sensitive to other factors as well. So if we have lower flow conditions, this might mean for the province less security, which means that the province becomes more dependent on flow conditions as well. So the question would be actually the question of the sectorial benefits that I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on. And that was for economic aspect of agricultural growth under changing conditions. And here I am showing the results for the delta, Saskatchewan River Delta. So if I change upstream flow conditions, how would that affect flow regime in what I wanted to show? I have actually and only showing the results for 3 flow regime under the wet, historical, and dry conditions. Once under current agriculture area, once under irrigated agriculture area. So obviously, if we have higher flow values, let's say under wet conditions, which if you remember, this was corresponding to 25% increase in flow volume in upstream. Obviously, the flows in this area will increase, and as you can see, when it gets dry, it actually reduces the flow. So meaning that the delta, the productivity at delta, really depends on what we do in upstream province of Alberta, and also considering the impact of agriculture areas. As you can see, when the flows are actually if you just compare these two values, you can see that the usage of water for agricultural activities will reduce amount of water in the delta, which is important for various things that I said related to biodiversity and productivity of the delta. That I'm going to talk about what that means for locals as well. Considering the interannual variability, we have actually used coefficient of variation to show that. Again, when we have increased the agriculture area, this means higher coefficient of variation. Again, this is affecting flood rhythmicity, meaning that it's not a good thing for the habitats in this ecosystem. So to just summarize what I have mentioned for this case study, we saw that agriculture sector itself, if they decide to increase the irrigated area, they will actually become more vulnerable to changes in upstream flow regime, because currently, if there would be changes in flow, this sector is more or less stable, but this 400% increase in agriculture area can actually affect their productivity from one year to another, meaning instability for them. In terms of hydropower production, we saw that it's more sensitive to changes in upstream flow regime rather than really agricultural expansion in terms of water use for that sector. And we also saw that the expansion of irrigation can boost the province economy, but that actually mean that less water for the delta, and which is affecting flooding in the delta and biochemical conditions of this region. So what I suggest to be done for this area, this was the work that I have done in the past few years, is that so far what you have seen was the results of bottom-up approach. We try to find the vulnerability of the system under changing conditions. Well, one can use top-down approach and can go with identifying the risk in the system corresponding to what might happen in the future based on the results of global climate models. And of course, we can actually perform risk-based analysis. Part of this I have done during my PhD, and the results are published, but using the combination of both approaches hasn't been done already. If there is someone interested in doing so, this can be a good, PhD work. And there is another point in my conclusions that I would like to add, and that is the point related to stakeholder viewpoint. This is something that for a lot of water resource management cases, we don't consider. We come with perfect engineering solution. We come with what we think is feasible in terms of water management, both quality and quantity of water. However, when we want to implement it, we see that locals are not in the favor of this practice. So it's going to be a fail for the policy that we have chosen. And that is something that we have to also consider in this province if we are actually deciding to expand agriculture areas, because here this is a work of one of my friends and colleagues back in time, that she has actually collected the narratives and viewpoints of stakeholders about climate change and agricultural developments, while environmental scientists or environmental groups were more worried about threat of climate change and agriculture areas. The sector of agriculture was more into economic growth, regardless of what is going to happen for the flow. We actually had viewpoints of indigenous community that were looking at water as a sacred thing, and they were actually into what I told you earlier, keeping natural flow as is. And they were already sad with what has happened in terms of construction of hydropower dams that has caused changes in downstream wildlife and extinction of various species. So if there would be changes in this province, it has to be communicated with these group of stakeholders. That is what I suggest in terms of integrated water resource management, and also including these different sectors in decision-making processes from the beginning to the end, to make sure that what is chosen would be implemented without a failure, and that is in the favor of all stakeholders. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm here. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Professor, for your valuable contributions.
You're welcome.
Now I would like to invite our last speaker in this session, Professor KAHYA, Director of Tashkent Institute of Architecture and Civil Engineering. Welcome, Professor.
Welcome to everyone. My friend is helping me to place my slide. Ben bir şey görmüyorum. I don't see anything. Ne yapacağım?
ESC'ye basın abi.
Evet.
ESC.
Ne yaptım? Sorry, we are trying to... Is everything okay?
Yes, we will need you to share your slides,
Bir
Professor.
şeyler yapmam lazım. Buradan mı yapacaksın şey?
Yapacağım. Yukarıya basın.
Nereye?
Şuraya. Yok yukarıya.
Nereye?
Ekran tanısın.
Şuraya.
Basın hocam.
Hı hı.
Yok. Verin basın.
Sen çekin.
And please select the window selection, not the entire screen.
Siz görünüyorsunuz sağ olun.
Tamam.
Siz
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you, we can see you, and we can see your slides, Professor.
Very good, but I don't see anyone, so I just seeing that my slide. Is this okay?
It's
All
perfectly
right.
fine, Professor.
Okay, then I'm now starting.
So we are ready to hear your presentation when you are ready, Professor.
Okay, I'm ready. I can start. So I am saluting, greeting everyone from Tashkent. And actually, my presentation would be different. I mean, in the same subject, but I couldn't locate that one. But I just prepared it this morning. I hope this gonna be fine for everyone. So, but subject is the mainly the same. So, drought management in semi-arid climate zone. Then we will just take this problem with respect to hydroclimatological perspective. So, uh, just a quick reminder, this is a concept reminder that drought is well-known natural event, recurrent event, which is most widespread natural catastrophic event. Especially nowadays, climate change is becoming a big issue. So this concept gaining much importance than ever. So four major drought types can be said to be like meteorological, hydrological, agricultural, and social economics. So here I'm going to talk about just two types, hydrological and agricultural type of drought. So, but generally most researchers have concentrate on like studies concerning large-scale drought observation or study domain, like as big as like a country size or more even. But some recent studies show that shrinking the size of the basin, study domain down to the basin scale, information or results obtained will make more sense. So this is the reason why we concentrate on the subject over a selected water basin. So this red font shows us the reference paper of mine and my PhD student. He already graduated and working in the Europe currently. So this is the also information that I just mentioned about the small scale study domain gives a better conclusion or indication about the drought. So sorry about that. For this reason, we selected a big basin in the mid-Turkey, which is called Konya Closed Basin. It is located in the mid-latitude and experiencing the semi-arid climate characteristics, which is also known as a hub of Turkey crops. So what happened to here? There's something wrong with this. I don't know. This pictures doesn't make sense anyway. The highlight of our study domain in Konya Basin, agriculture sector. In general, of course, the larger water consumption in Turkey is about like 74% of water draws goes to agricultural demand or water use. But same statistic can be, if it is applied to the Konya Basin, it's about goes up to 88%. So more than 50% of the basin, it's about like 2.7 million hectares, are classified as a agricultural land. This is the reason we value this basin as a hub of our. These are some highlighted information about the basin. So altitude varies between 400 and 3,400 meters, and it comprises of like a 14% of Turkish irrigation land, and it is the fourth largest basin in the country, and annual precipitation, average annual precipitation, of course, varies between 300 and 2,400 meters. So in our study, the periods that we worked on was 1975 and 2000. So we had like a 10 gauge station of stream flow observation, and 28 grids provided by NOAA for the model simulated soil moisture series, and grids are distributed on the half-degree resolution on both directions. So all these are actually here in this plot. As you see, this blue dot corresponds to stream flow station, gauging station. The red triangles are for soil moisture observation. And okay, so we took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 large-scale climate indices from Climate Prediction Center of NOAA. So mainly they are North Atlantic Oscillation, Arctic Oscillation, Pacific Decade Oscillations, Scandinavian, Polar Eurasia, Eastern Atlantic, Western Russian patterns, and these are the known, well-known large-scale climate indices. Actually, this which all are to some extent, of course, possibly have an influential relation to the our watershed. This is the reason we thought that we knew that some of them wouldn't make any sense in terms of significant relation, but particularly the top two, North Atlantic and Arctic Oscillation, which both also have close pattern. So at the end of this study, our expectation came true. Let's make a quick review. So for stream flow, STI DROUGHT index and standardized runoff index SRI are well-known indices in order to describe or present hydrologic drought, but we know that these are parametric indices, and both can be represented by the gamma and log normal PDF respectively, of course. So what we did, we check out our time series of stream flow, goodness of feed. Then what we realized that except two, the other remaining station seem to problematic in order to with respect to following the log normal distribution. So therefore, we actually conclude that incapability of the parametric drought indices, this STI and SRI, over the Konya closed basin is evident. So for this reason, we start thinking about another effective stream flow indices that can make in every respect. So we thought that to work with the standardized stream flow index, which is called SSFI, here can be briefly discussed in the slide, which is a standardized drought analysis toolbox, SDAT. This is the reference for the readers or curious investigator can see the detailed information about this method or methodology, and was applied to derive non-parametric standardized drought indices. So empirical probability in this approach requires the use of Green-Gordon plotting position, which is mathematically expressed as this. So P stands for the empirical probability at that any selected month, and I is the rank of non-zero input, of course, in an ascending form order, and N denotes the sample size. So in order to make this quantity or magnitude in a standardized index form, so we use this SI formula shown in here. And so this algorithm, the other mathematical detail didn't was not given here, so it's available in our paper. But I can say that this algorithm can be used or can be tool also as to describe any variable such as stream flow or soil moisture time series to calculate or to come up with the drought indices. So in our study, monthly stream flow and soil moisture were used to generate 3, 6, 12, and 24-month drought indices, like a short, mid, and long-term drought indices. So it was like a symbolized like a SSFI3 and blah blah. And for the our agricultural drought indices, so this is it was shown by SSI notations like 3, 6, 12, and 24. So we calculated based on that relation, mathematical relation. And also we need to define drought scale, drought classification, which is commonly used this scale, also adopted in our study to gain a better evaluation of the drought severity. So these are the range about describing like moderate, severe, or extreme, exceptional drought conditions. So the threshold value should be selected, but we follow the suggested threshold value, which is -0.8. So when we come to the talk about the temporal spatial variation of SSFI and SSI, hydrological or agricultural series. Because of the multiplicity in the number of streamflow stations, which is 10, and also soil moisture grids is like a 28, we thought that to break the study area into like this red part, which is west part, we call it region A. The other remaining blue or eastern part of the basin is called region B. So we give our result based on this partition, of course. For streamflow value, DROUGHT indices, of course, this is, I'm just going to, I'm sorry, there is a mistake about that. This should be other plot, because I give the information about the 3-month series, but the plot I just now noticed that this is 12 month. It should be 12, because we did this like all the other time scale 3, 6, 12, and 24. Just as example, I want to give only the short term 3-month series for information, but that was a mistake. I'm sorry. So anyway, I'm just going to talk about the short-term streamflow DROUGHT indices, standardized DROUGHT indices, of course. The variation in the region A, which is here, assuming this is the true one. The red one is for region A, blue one is the region B, the black one in the middle, average for all station. So then what we noticed that in region A, which is western part of the watershed, variation in this standardized streamflow DROUGHT indices with the 3-month average show us a higher shift than the counterpart. So this is a noticeable finding. So this could be, I mean, this is our evaluation about this result, that we think that this could be due to the high precipitation and consequently the high streamflow exists in the western part. So on the other hand, region B experienced severe drought occurrence on the post 2001 era, after that year. So this is what I'm having a problem. I'm sorry. There is something here. I don't want this. Okay. It could be also highlighted that all the station experienced D1, either between D1 and D4 categories in the various duration during the period 1908 and 2008. So DROUGHT categorization, I mean the appearance of is varying from 1 to 4, not like a standard or uniform appearance. So this is for soil moisture display, but again, same mistake made it. Sorry about that. But again, lower SSI3 value were noted to be related to grid, because we are talking about the grid when we analyze the soil moisture drought index. So located in region A before the year 1998, but for the region B, this conclusion is true for after year 1998. So low variation in SSI3 fluctuation was shown as the agricultural drought is well established to relieve drought persistence is less sensitive to abrupt fluctuation. So this is also interesting finding in our basin also. So this table actually summarizes all characteristics of various stream flow and soil moisture index, defined index of course in our way, over our study domain. So these are the time scales, these are the drought index for two different variables, of course, and the region and overall in three different scenarios. And number of droughts is listed here, and duration of the drought, severity of the drought, arrival of the drought, all those critical information which are all required for the drought management plan are concluded in this table, which will be, I believe, the first study in this approach. So hopefully this is going to be a very useful guideline for the water resources managers. So highlighted other result regarding the all time scales, of course. The average and maximum duration severity value for 3, 6, 12 stream flow indexes in region B are much higher than those in the region A. So we call here kind of a dipole behavior or response of the surface variable to climate or atmospheric forcing, like west and east, like a working like a dipole manner. So this is also noted by several other studies. I remember that one group in Izmir working a drought study in the same basin. They mentioning features like this in their study also. In contrary to the stream flow in this index, drought in this index, the higher duration and severity value for 24 months, which is the longest series, period as time scale, belong to the region B. So this is a contrast. So a high maximum severity value of the same series, of course, are observed in region B at all the time. This gives a signal that worse other conditions, drought conditions in that region for that time scales also. And other highlights are given here. I'm not going to read everything one by one, but our conclusions here, different time scales corresponds to different frequency of months and droughts categories also. So to explore the influence of different large-scale climatic oscillation, I abbreviated like LSCI here, over the variability of the RAS series, we apply actually cross-wavelet transformation analysis in our study in order to observe or catch the influence of this large-scale oscillation in our both different drought indices. So, but we just concentrate on, we applied this analysis only for 3-month SSFI and SSI series in association with the, each of these large-scale oscillation indices. So we choose more wavelet which is commonly used in such type of analysis, and significant level of cross spectra power were considered as a red noise. You will see it in the plot also, which is specified by the thick black background at 95% confidence level in our figures. So any change in the arrow direction in a specific frequency range could correspond to the change in a sign of correlation, as well as leading factor on the relation. Everyone knows this. So we also detect this type of conclusions from, I pick up that inference from the figures. Relative phases relation is represented by the arrows with antiphase pointing left in phase pointing right. I mean, the arrow you cannot see in the plot actually reflects this information. And these are the, but this is true because I didn't make any mistake here. This 3-month average is correct. So this is for North Atlantic Oscillation, Arctic Oscillation, Pacific Decade Oscillation, and Scandinavian Poem, and the others also. So this is the results of our cross wavelet transform analysis. So these are the concave that we just concentrate inside. Then the color, meaning of this color and other details are given in our web version of the paper. And this is for soil moisture results. So how are we going to read this both figures, group of figures, can be summarized in these 2 next slides. So cross-wavelet transform analysis between large-scale climate oscillation and this should be anyway, and stream flow drought indices for the 3 months series, of course, which is the first figure. And low common power on the high frequency signal, which is period less than 8 months. High common power on the low frequency signals, which is, that is to say, period more than 33 months. When you look at that figures carefully, so you can see this 8 and 33 magnitude meaningful. So it is evident in these figures that North Atlantic Oscillation has a strong effect on our defined drought variable on both stream flow and soil moisture version also for this period and this period. So we detected 2 different periods which is between 1980 and 2002, and 2008 and 2012. For this two period, both series, droughts index series, we can say that now has a strong effect. So a similar conclusion can be made for Arctic oscillation, because both indices has a similar pattern, so it's not a big surprise for us. So the result of cross-wavelet transform based on the Pacific oscillation and both series demonstrates several significant association, but not as strong as what we found for the North Atlantic oscillation, with this range of the months here, 5 to 70 for stream flow, 9 to 70 months for the soil moisture during this study period. So it is worth to say that a significant correlation appear to have a negative signs for shorter periods. So we can say it with the confidence. So for the other large-scale climate oscillation, like a Scandinavian pattern, exhibit a leading impact on both series, but non-significant relation over low frequency were prevailing over the formation relation. So it's not a good candidate for strong relation as not Atlantic oscillation or Arctic oscillation. Considering the this next pattern for the both series also similar month period. So for the next and the last pattern, also we can say that several links on shorter period can be called as a significant relation, but not as important as the North Atlantic oscillation. So approximate overlap pattern on the now and our linkage to the both series seem to be consistent with the previous study concerning different hydroclimate variable over Turkey. So we compare our results obtained from this study with the all previous conclusions or findings in Turkey, but of course they use different area, different type of drought indices, but in general we found good agreement with the previous studies. So as almost last, I came to the last point, this last slide. So question is how to mitigate or eliminate the negative impact of the drought and water scarcity. So these are the typical suggestions, but very important to recall here also: to improve the water availability, monitoring and drought impact assessment, and to increase the public awareness and education, and to enhance the mechanism to provide water supply to sub-basins that are under risk of the water shortage during the drought, and to coordinate, provide technical assistance for planning efforts for development of water and soil resources by local administration and other authorities, and to reduce water demand and encourage water use efficiency and conservation of water resources and water quality, and the others. But to evaluate the potential impact of the climate change is very important also. So this is also noted by these guys. Also, they did a good job for Konya Closed Basin. So this is all I can talk tonight. So I don't know. Okay. I Okay.
Thank you for your valuable presentation, Professor KAHYA. It is
Thanks
a pleasure
a lot.
to have you here with us sharing your research. Also, I would like to thank all the professors for showing the courtesy of joining this session and sharing their research. I now announce the end of the third session and hope to meeting you in the upcoming session shortly. Thank you very much for being with us.